Recording is on.
All right. Hi, folks. We have made it to the end of the hackathon. I don't have anything in Miro just yet, but I figured I wanted to maybe start by seeing if Jessica and Amber, y'all had any words you wanted to maybe share.
Yes, I will share a little bit and then I'll pass it over to Amber. I just want to thank everyone, thank GOAT for making this happen. Thanks everyone for participating. My whole goal, when we were first talking with Ankita years ago, 3 years ago, when we were first developing this concept, the whole goal was to start idea exchange and to start relationship building. And I feel like that has been achieved above and beyond what we could have dreamed of. So I feel so honored to have been a part of this process and to have been able to experience this. Every day I came home and would tell my family, I learned so much today. So thank you for teaching me and for being a part of this. I'm not sure if I've told everyone, but I'm leaving for a position at USDA next week. So I'll be at USDA NEPA, so you guys will probably still get to work with me. But this was the perfect way to end my career at the Organic Center. So thank you guys all so much. Amber, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I really just want to second Jessica's emotions on this with the gratitude and the excitement and all the learning. I'll also say that I was really intimidated by this process at first. I remember one of our first planning meetings and somebody asking if I knew about Sims, and I was like, what? and this has actually been a lot of fun. It was intimidating, but it was a lot of fun. So thanks for the great ideas for Work Adventure. Also, I've been feeling pretty hopeful about these two projects that have emerged from this hackathon, and something that just kept coming up in my brain as I was listening to the evolution of these is that I think both of these projects are actually funding worthy. So, again, one of the goals that we had talked about with Ankita was that maybe we won't get all the way in 3 days, but hopefully this will be like a seed for something that can just keep growing and pursuing grants in the future to really make some of these ideas very developed and real. It's also pretty exciting. So yeah, I guess maybe I'll just end it there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I too am excited. I think everyone has been. I think I'll just maybe share a couple of points on order of operations. So we'll have Paul, why don't you guys go first? And then Jeff, your team can present after. I know we have Leslie and Martin and Jamie and Juliet in the room. Leslie and Martin, I think I'm looking to you for mentor feedback. And so I figure if you can maybe just do a quick reminder, and this is true for everybody, just quickly introduce yourself before you start speaking, because I realize this is our first time actually speaking out to the world at the end of this entire event as a group. And so just that. And so after each presentation, we'll leave some time for feedback and organic discussion, and then we can switch off at halfway. And so I'll do the opposite of what I said I was for everybody else. I'll introduce myself at the end of what I've just said. So I'm Ankita, assistant professor at Purdue University, Agricultural Informatics Lab. Really excited to be here, and I look forward to the presentations. It's been fun working with both the teams. All right, Paul, we're over to you now.
Great. Let me see if I can get this going. I put together a little presentation. Is that working? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Paul Widener. I'm a developer who is primarily working on the FarmOS record-keeping system. When I first saw all the announcements about this hackathon come up, I became interested in the topic area around tracking ecosystem service goals. So that's what we've been kind of working on the past few days. Let's see. Kind of going to go through this slideshow. It's kind of a series of like where we started and where we have ended up with the project. So we first started talking with Martin, who's also on this call, about one specific ecosystem service being carbon sequestration, and specifically some thoughts around tree measurements. And it was a good way to first start exploring this idea about what are the different kinds of data points we need to collect and what challenges might be associated with that. And so for tree measurements, there's problems with data collection where you might want to identify one unique tree, but that's going to be different in a forest versus in an orchard. There's also data collection costs and different sampling methods. And obviously, these sorts of ideas also carry over to other ecosystem services. So if you're doing soil health and thinking about soil tests, there's similar problems involved here. So a little piece of work that came out of this process was actually creating a quick form in FarmOS that we were making as we were talking about all this, just as an example of what it might look like to provide a user interface to collect this data. Some other ideas that came up in this thought process were thinking about images. Images are pretty useful because it's hard to, I guess it's also costly to get specific values when you're collecting data, but images are a good way to get a snapshot in time. And later on, we're imagining a user interface to go through all these images and extrapolate changes and use that as a way to identify good and bad things that might be happening in the ecosystem and the specific ecosystem service we're concerned about. Martin also brought up some cool ideas about a classification system. So if you have collected a bunch of these images, it'd be useful to be able to defer to experts to bring in the qualitative data at a later time. It also kind of echoed this idea of gamifying this whole process, which is interesting. So I mocked up a little UI where you might have a bunch of logs in FarmOS which have images with trees on them, and then another user could come in to actually classify what that tree's vigor or the tree species might be. And so then that conversation evolved into thinking about some existing programs and tools that already exist. So one thing that Ankita brought to our attention was the USDA NRCS EQIP program, which provides financial and technical assistance to agricultural producers to address natural resource concerns. This was pretty cool to think about because there's many different ecosystem services under that umbrella. Two we were interested in were cover crop and forest stand improvement programs. But as we kept on looking closer and closer, it seemed unclear what the data reporting requirements were. And it also differs by each state, which makes sense because ecosystems are different everywhere. So it's another complexity of this whole process. It might be hard to create one report that's going to work everywhere. So kind of one thing we learned in this process is just creating a tool that makes it easier to pull out the data that you're interested in, maybe not get it into the final 100% like perfect format. That doesn't need to be the end goal, but being able to have a tool that helps you just get to the data certainly has value within it. Also, we were looking at this NOP biodiversity guidance compliance tool, which was it kind of came into our attention. I believe Juliet shared it with us, and it was developed by John Quinn, who also participated in the hackathon for a little bit earlier this morning. It came in at a great time when we were thinking about biodiversity and specifically bird counts, and we were starting to draft this quick form, and then we found this tool that had all these other questions that were related to biodiversity. and bird counts specifically. So that helped continue to evolve our thought process here into a larger picture with some future work. Ankita's, I want to give her credit for this term, an ecosystem service monitoring module that could be added to FarmOS. And what's cool about this, to explain this diagram on the right, the idea is that there's a lot of different pieces of data that are useful for very many use cases. So first and foremost, there's farm management. So you want to collect all this data on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis, but then you might want to pull it out at later points for different use cases. So the same data can be used for organic certifications, equip conservation plans, or even a biodiversity and marketplace ecosystem. So to like succinctly say our goals for this module, the workflow might be something where users input the goals they're interested in, like soil health, biodiversity, and organic certification. That would then turn on some different quick forms, which help facilitate data collection and provide suggestions for what data the user needs to collect. And then over time, plans can be added that help the user or the farmer work towards specific programs. And these programs could be like a organic certification or a specific equip conservation plan. And in that plan, there could be the ability to track your progress through different goals and milestones, as well as do its best job to create a final report and the ability to analyze that data. And in the end, hopefully this helps realize all the goals. Next steps, and I might want to hand this off to Ankita a little bit right here, but we'd like to integrate work towards that future goal with Ankita's participatory design workshops, which are already planned and funded to do some soil health action plan work, but we'd also like to reuse that process with a lens on biodiversity and ecosystem services. So can I tee you up a little bit, Ankita, maybe?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So through some of the work that we currently have funded and via Open Team, we're actually going to be doing a series of both interviews with farmers to learn more about their soil health data collection practices, data management practices, and a couple of other activities through the summer. And it all will end with a series of participatory design workshops. And so as I was chatting with this group, it just seemed like it would make a lot of sense for us to try and think about some of that early stage user research that we're doing as a way to inform what comes out in this module, right? So the work that we're doing will help inform, right? What variables do people actually want in some of these forms? What types of tracking are they doing? What types of reporting are they doing? And so what we would really want to do is include representatives across from sort of three groups of farmers or data collectors, plan makers like USDA Organic, Equip, or others, and plan enforcers like certifiers, auditors, or markets. And so we would try this out once. So think about it in terms of, both getting a sense of what the user needs are, developing a reference architecture, and then instantiating it once in this module for soil health. And then, we would try to do it again, ideally with, folks who have been informing the biodiversity work and other types of ecosystem service goals. And so we'd love to be able to see if there's maybe a way we could do it with the Organic Center and others for other types of data collection. But that's this gives us a nice next step for this year. And so in our hope is that by the end of the calendar year, we can have a prototype of this available for people to use. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah, so this last slide I had, I just remembered we had this existing little graphic about FarmOS, and it's kind of showing a workflow of starting with FarmOS, mapping out your farm and your areas, and onboarding your workers, people on the farm to collect data and create logs. But it made me realize there's a big piece of this workflow that's missing in the diagram, and that's where I think FarmOS can evolve into a record-keeping platform to provide all the things I was just talking about: tools for planning, tracking goals, ecosystem service goals, knowledge sharing, and in general, just be able to create these different ways to extract more value from the data that you collect. So I think that's all I have for the presentation. There's a lot more nitty-gritty details within the Miro board, but I wanted to create a little slide deck to encapsulate our whole process throughout the hackathon. Are there any questions or anything maybe Mike or Martin, I think, is here, might want to add?
I think that sums it up great.
Hey, Paul, this is Martin. One piece I would add, I think it's really great how you guys, well, first, were able to really rapidly demo the capabilities of FarmOS to me, and then show, hey, this could actually be used and as a starting point for equip data, but possibly extended into other ecosystem service markets. I think that was a really great way to looking at the market viability of the project.
So perhaps we can open it up to mentors as well if you have feedback and sort of write the strengths, weaknesses, areas for improvement, any suggestions. It would be lovely to hear your thoughts.
Hey, I can go in, Kita. Yeah, just love this idea of kind of some open source format for tracking ecosystem services. I've got some ideas on a lot of other contacts. I would be interested in also how can you make it like really continuous improvement? Because, like, especially in the soil health realm, like you don't build soil overnight. I like to say you don't build soil on quarterly profit reporting cycles, right? So, like, how can you set it up so that like each farmer could say, here's a set of practices that we're doing now. Here's how we're tracking. Here's the next things we're doing and where we need help and support on that. So just a thought for going forward, but I like the idea overall. And if you could build it out and really make a lot of other connections with, say, Xerces Society for pollinators, Wild Farm Alliance is great. They've done a lot on bird habitat and other things. And then the Savannah Institute's really good on trees. So I think if you could find that list of partners that could work with you, that would give the whole thing much more oomph. So, yeah.
Who's the other one? Xerces Society, Savannah Group, and what was the other one?
Yeah, Xerces Society is, and you can email me and I can give you contacts for everybody. Xerces Society is pollinator habitat. We've worked a lot with them. Wild Farm Alliance is fabulous. They have like a biodiversity thing. They've done a lot with bird. The last thing I saw was bird habitat. And then Savannah Institute's in the Midwest, and they've done a lot with tree work. Just seems like the more that you can pull the whole nonprofit sector in to work together, the more power and leverage it's all going to make.
That's a really great point. I think during one of the discussions we were having with, I think it was Jeff. Is that who it was? Okay. He had mentioned the Wild Farm Alliance, and then also I think we had tree benefits. So there's a national tree benefit calculator, UNFI, and a couple of other pieces. We're trying to figure out which partners have the most interest in which kinds of data. I think would be really helpful to learn more about.
I just shared that with. We're like prepping this year for the digital coffee shop, and I just sent that to the folks who are trying to reach out to people with expertise. So that's a great connection. But my only comment is just like I would love to. I think what we're seeing is like at least the way that we're integrating is, we'll have a question set or some type of data that we're pushing to FarmOS or external services like FarmLab do. And we really need visual elements within PharmaOS to be able to see and interact with that in a way that is accessible. So PharmaOS becomes a value add in the process, and this just is great. I think this is huge, and the more we can standardize it, and the more you can understand all those external applications, the better. The only warning is just that, like, if we build them on a bilateral basis, we're going to build 8,000 things that no one's going to use, and that's just, you just got to be super aware of that. That like organizing humans is a necessary part of doing this successfully. But this looks awesome.
Hi, this is Leslie. I'll jump in here because I only have a really brief comment. I'm here in central Pennsylvania, for those of you who haven't been on with me yet, and I have a background in organic certification as well as organic farming. So I want to give you good feedback on the images and encourage you to do a lot more with that, as much as you can. I mean, I don't mean more as in like you didn't do enough, but to try to keep that in mind as you go forward. I think that's really, really good. I love the images when you showed like yesterday the maps and things. And then I get a little hung up with the verbiage. So like I never heard the term ecosystem service before in my life until yesterday, 2 days ago. So I don't know if that's just because I'm out of the loop, or like when I hear ecosystem service monitoring module, that sounds like really research speak to me. As a farmer, I'm like, what the heck is that? And I don't think it's wrong. I don't want you to take this as criticism. I just want to give you that as my personal feedback. Like I would just like not even look at that if I saw that come across my email, like ecosystem service monitoring module, what? So anyway, I mean, I think ecosystems, we know what that is. We know what all those individual things are. I just keep getting hung up with ecosystem service. And that may just be because I'm not familiar with that, but I think of just ecosystems or ecosystem improvement or like, projects or something. Anyway, that's just, I know that's like not really helpful, but I wanted to just say that.
If I may offer, that's incredibly helpful. That is incredibly helpful. I think that's such a big part of why when we're building this out, it needs to be something that actual farmers are informing, because otherwise we will use the wrong words or we'll use words that don't actually make sense to the right people. So please.
And you guys are super creative, so I know you'll come up with something really great. And because it's such a good product. It's going to be such a good product. And even when you go out for funding and stuff, just consider that, because I think the title has a lot, really can make or break a project, or can at least attract people or not attract people at the outset. And we want more people to be included in helping with this. So that's all I have. It's great. I'm excited about it.
Thank you, Leslie.
Awesome. Any other thoughts from the group at large? Cool. I know we've spent a good 2.5 days talking amongst ourselves, so I think we're ready for the second group now then. Jeff.
Awesome. That was very inspiring. First, I just want to thank all the organizers. This has been such a pleasure to channel some creative energy and some problems I've been kicking around. My name is Jeff. I currently work in software, but in the past I have worked on organic farms for many years and done a slew of other jobs, including worked on straw bale house builds and worked in an educational nonprofit. And so the concept we've been brainstorming about this hackathon has to do with, the question of what if we had co-ops in different fields and some kind of overarching structure that bridged them together. What could we get out of that? Could we get people who didn't want to stay in one industry for the rest of their life being supported in moving into different fields, as the seasons change. If you were in a farming co-op, could you be supported in learning some tech skills and doing that for the winter? Could you be a tech worker having too much screen time? You want to help your neighbor build a house. You want to get a group together, a co-op, and build an eco house together. How could we have the co-ops work together? Have kind of this HR level. So anyway, we'll get into more details, but what we wanted to do was create kind of a high level concept and then put that out to the world. And then I'm sure everyone's going to say, okay, I know what to do with that in my area, because right here we have a bunch of farms, land for this. Here we have really high housing costs. We want to focus on that side. All this can happen. We just want to get kind of this, some persona use cases. We'll talk about some of those. We've done some good interviews. And I'm going to pass it over to Greg now to kind of go through our hackathon journey to, unearth some of the core motivations here. Are you muted, Greg?
Yep. Sorry, just had to get back to you. That's the link to the Miro board, and you can follow me when you get in there, or maybe I can share my screen. That's probably the best way.
Yes, please.
I'll do that. 1 moment. Maybe.
If you need me to, I'm happy to as well.
Yeah, you do it.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not working. So you can just start if you want, Kita, at the 1 where it says 1 there.
She might have had to jump out and jump back in to start the screen share. Here she is.
So Keita, if you could go to that number 1, like in the middle. So we spent the first day largely just like talking. I think you guys did such a good job of presenting something very concrete. Ours was like much mushier. We talked about ideas of organization, about what people really wanted, what were the core needs that were trying to be served, how that might work, what kind of value could be served out of this cooperative, some of the core design concepts. So this was sort of like our semi-organized brainstorming board from that first day. And there were some things that came up several times that I want to note in the core design concepts here. It's just like probably the most central one is just that people want a mix of work, like a lot of people want to have a mix and diversity of work, whether that be working seasonally, whether that be having the capacity to learn a new skill without the fear of losing your job, your capacity, your income, your healthcare, whatever that is. And also that oftentimes that mix is actually a healthier way to live. So farming for 40 years is hard on the body. Coding for 40 years is hard on the body. But they're hard on the body in different ways. And so some of this is like, gee, aren't there ways that we can kind of optimize that experience so people can get the mix of things that they want, that we can be healthier people, and that ultimately we can be, more productive, or at least as productive, and have better lives. So that's one, happy humans. Co-creation came up a lot, especially in the ag tech space. There's a lot of developers who don't understand ag, and there's a lot of producers who don't understand tech. And so there's a lot of failures on both ends of the spectrum. And the best case scenario is when you have a little bit of both. And so there's an opportunity here to have a little bit of both. So that seemed like a good design concept. Community first. If you've ever worked in the research world, people, after they've developed interactions with farmers or built a farmer community, they keep them like so secretive they'll never tell you a single name. Because actually building that community and building trust so that people will try things out or try something new or provide information is actually really, really hard to do. And so I think something that came up a lot was just trust, building communities first, rather than doing that after the fact. And then another thing that came up a lot was mission alignment. And I think that really is a natural outcome of trust. If we're going to be collaborating across, production scales or software developers into agriculture or vice versa, or into other types of things, like that requires a lot of collaboration, and that collaboration requires a lot of trust. I have to trust that the person coming in who's going to work with me for the next 3 weeks is someone who I believe in, whose values aligned and mission aligned, who is not going to screw something up. There's just a lot when you start collaborating at that level. So I think mission alignment is kind of a requirement, and trust is kind of a requirement. So we laid out a lot of these things. What's the culture and values? What are the people and skills? What are the people? What skills do they need to have at a minimum? How can they skill up in the process? Thinking about this as a sort of like a set of tools, virtual tools, skills, but also physical tools. It's possible that this could be done in a very place-based way. I think there's an interesting design there. What are the mix of activities? What services and value can it provide? So I kind of described some of them, like you could have a seasonal schedule between different types of jobs. You could live in a mission-oriented community, or you could live in a more diverse community than you have now, or you can apply a portion of your income towards something that you yourself couldn't do, but that you're very mission aligned with or believe in. You could build skills and expertise without having to quit your job, like et cetera, et cetera. So those are the kind of things that we would imagine would be value propositions for being part of it. And then, who would use this service? So we talked about external services, like, for example, imagining that we had people who both worked, take the simple case, they worked in software development, and then they also farmed, right? The simple sort of seasonal case. You could imagine that has value to universities and students who want to learn more about applied agriculture, who want to develop technologies for specific applications, but they don't understand them. They could go there and learn that, right? It could have value for companies who are trying to design software but don't have beta testing groups. They could go there and implement technology in the field in real time and get real meaningful feedback from people who are willing to give it. It's really hard to have full-time farmers 80 hours a week give you feedback, in like early June. So that's another service that could be provided in addition to just software services, and then of course agricultural outputs if there was a farming component. So I think there's a lot of sort of unique synergies, to use a sort of dumb word, in combining some of these different components together. So that's that. And sort of, something I pointed out a lot is just that cost of living really drives a lot of our need for high dollar work. If you're living in New York City and paying $6,000 for a flat, it's pretty expensive. You have to make a lot of dollars per hour. So maybe there's ways that we can work together to lower the cost of living, and that enables everybody to have more choice and for everybody to be more selective around the mission and goals they have in the world. So another little thing, and then we can get into the use cases, is if you come over here to where it says 2, Kita, I don't know if you see, yeah, thank you. One of the terms that came up really was this umbrella cooperative. Umbrella cooperative meaning like covering a lot of different potential industries or sectors producing things, with software and agriculture being sort of the two simplest ideas of this. Oh, thanks. But I just wanted to point this out because this was Samuel who was really active in the discussion yesterday, and I think really had a lot of great ideas. He sketched this out while we were talking, and it's cool. It's an upside down umbrella, and it's the Umbrella Workers Cooperative, UWC. You can see like the U and the W in the top of the umbrella, and then the C at the end. It's really cool. And then he just talked about it as a symbol where, you know, when the umbrella is right side up, it protects you against rain. And I think that's, again, something that everybody talked about, is just sort of like, because of the high cost of living, and because we all have a lot of things we have to do in our life, we really feel like you're sort of in a rat race, right? That's what that rain represents, is like you're just getting whacked in the face with 5,000 little things, especially if you have kids. And you never have enough time to stop and look around and decide if where you're going is where you want to go. And so just like that. And then the other way around, when it's upside down, it's kind of like a boat. And another thing that came up a lot was, you know, commodification of agriculture, as sort of like one of those things that it's a persistent driver away from doing things right. For as hard as folks like you and other people try, it just makes it really, really difficult to do the things you know that you want to do. And so, you know, we kind of like this idea of the co-op being able to provide the space and breathing room to do things the way that you want to do it. So anyway, that's it. Some neat ideas, and some neat images. So then I'll hand it over to you to do the use case walkthroughs.
All right. Now I'm not seeing the mirror board anymore. I'm just seeing Kita's avatar. Does anybody else see that? Should I share my screen?
I see it. Do you guys see it?
Oh, now it's back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you move over to number 3, Kita?
Yeah. Can we go to number 3, please?
Oh, you're just following. Are you following me? I've moved.
No, I'm here. I think there's just a lag.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
If folks are on the Miro board, it's just right below that. There's like a number 3. It says use case for partner co-ops.
I'm still seeing 2, but maybe I'll just go over to the mirror board. And is everybody looking at the mirror board now?
I think so.
Is it just me who can only see 2?
Well,
I think it might just be stuck on the.
when I went to the mirror board from that link, it's just blank thing. Like I used the link in the chat and it's just blank.
There we go.
See nothing. I can see that.
There you go. Now you got it.
Okay. I'm still getting used to this Miro thing. So every time I look at it, all my alignment gets messed up. So looks like we got some overlapping text box here. Sorry. Okay. So we made myself one of the personas or profiles because, you know, I basically have this problem. I, at some point, quit my office job and stumbled into the farming world around Ann Arbor and was like, wow, this is what I want to do forever. Love this. I'm outside in the sun. I see every sunrise, every sunset. I'm getting all the good microbes from the soil. Getting some exercise is so much better than sitting in front of a computer. And so that was really great when it was really warm out. And then one day a cold wind blew and everyone was like, hey, what are you doing after the farm season? It's like, gee, I don't know. So at that point, it became a scramble to do freelance work. I didn't know how to really, you know, charge for my services or get myself like good healthcare. You know, I was kind of on my own. I could partner up with some other farmers who had some coding. We could do some freelance coding together, help some local business with their website. But anyway, what if instead of me scrambling, I had this co-op of co-ops or federated co-op or umbrella co-op, and it said, hey, Jeff, okay, so you're not planning to do the winter work on the farm. And let's say you need to make some extra cash. You've run out of money from not making much money off the land, as it's hard to do when you're being really ecological and trying to do a high quality product and connect to consumers. And you're interested in doing some other stuff too. You've learned a lot on the farm. You want to spread that good knowledge. So what if this co-op was to, kind of say, okay, next you want to get into eco building. We will start slowly kind of pairing you in. You can shadow with some builders, as we get closer to, some big build that's going to happen. We got this contract. We're going to build a straw bale house for somebody in the community. And, we've got these videos for you to watch, here's how to do this, here's some tools that we can kind of set you up with in tool sharing. And, you're going to be able to have healthcare. You're not on your own. You're going to be able to put one thing on your resume. You're part of the Co-op Federation of Ann Arbor. So with farming, lots of pros and some cons. If I were to just do farming for the rest of my life, it's possible I'd be super happy. It's also possible I could be injured or, run out of money and burn out. And I have a lot of friends trying to do farming and burning out. So let's say I was helped to, it's the fall, I switch over to the eco building. That's, this co-op is kind of entrepreneurial, and it's also kind of addressing the need of, like, if we all knew how to help each other build and maintain houses, maybe we wouldn't have such a housing crisis over time. And maybe we'd build more sustainable houses as opposed to these quick, cheap vinyl, very unsustainable houses. So maybe I'll get paid more over time for those skills. That, that's very valuable. There's also some physical constraints as far as, like, me being able to move stuff around. I could get injured, all these things. So I might not want to do that forever either. Maybe it gets even colder and I'm ready to move on. And at that point, the overarching, bridge co-op is saying, okay, we're going to pair you in with, this contract project that this co-op, this coder co-op has already set up. Either we're working with some research institution, we got to, code them up an app or some kind of like statistical model or whatever, or we're doing some kind of entrepreneurial app where we're helping gardeners do, planning through augmented reality or something. And maybe it's something that's kind of, it goes out to the masses and everybody pays $5 or they donate or whatever. We're not selling their data. We've got a coder co-op that's less about profit and more about equity and, doing some meaningful work. So there's a lot of benefits to that. You could potentially work remotely if that changes in my life. I really want to work remotely for some reason, or I'm injured or sick, or I want to basically make more money in this modern era, or I want to keep up with how the matrix is being formed and, like, not be left in the dust with that, have some kind of extra skills. And this co-op is, again, helping facilitate the forecasting. Hey, we got some people come in from farms or eco building or education. Hey, coder co-op, potentially could you take on some new people? So there might be somebody in that coder co-op, like our persona Jamie, who's based on a person that we all know and like, and it's very helpful. And so they, potentially they've already done their time farming. They love coding. They're very eager to, help other people get into, the joys of open source and, all these cool tools that you can use, design new tools. They're not necessarily going for this ride like, persona Jeff is. They might kind of, for the most part, be in that coder co-op and develop a lot of good expertise. But they're very interested in creating connections between the people in that office and the broader ecosystem with farmers, with building, so that you're not just siloed and you have no idea why you'd ever support a local farm. You know, you want to have a mix of people who can have those discussions and maybe bring in some vegetables to the office. Maybe you're going out and hanging out on the farm. You know, you've got that opportunity as a coder. If you did decide that you were looking at a screen for too long, you know, you'd have the opportunity to jump in. But there's potentially synergies. Again, like you know, if you're trying to have product stakeholders who really know what it's like to be on a farm, or are thinking about ecosystems, whatnot, and you're coding up an app, well, obviously you're going to do a better app if you've got people mixed in, diversity of backgrounds. So then let's say in the springtime, I'm saying like, wow, the world's going nuts. We got to affect the future generation, get them while they're young, get them excited about co-ops or nature or, you know, better health. So then you switch over to the education co-op, and maybe we're partnered with people like Kita, who are more ingrained with kind of the grants, how to write a grant, how to design some kind of education module, how to connect with teachers and, you know, follow their curriculum rules, do a summer camp, whatnot. And again, the co-op of co-ops, the HR layer, is saying, you know, hey, Keto, we got these people kind of interested. Can we match them? You know, let's do some pre-work, kind of, you know, set them up so that when spring comes and they show up ready to go, we're not just spinning wheels. We can be really productive. Potentially, again, there's synergies between, you know, the education co-op. If they need something designed as an app, maybe they cross back over to the coder co-op. And so within this whole co-op of co-ops, you're kind of building a lot of relationships, a lot of sense of, you know, we're not totally focused on profit. We're focused on community, almost creating like a natural ecosystem habitat where you've got different plants and fungi and whatnot all playing niches, and, you know, then the whole thing thrives. We want to, you know, we've got some people who are kind of in different roles and some people cross-pollinating, moving in between them. So then potentially, you know, you got students wanting to cycle back through. You got farmers want to do education for a bit, but they don't want to spend a ton of time with a group of kids. That can also burn you out. So maybe you start the cycle back over. You go back over to anything that you want. The sky's the limit. This is just an example. This is something that I could see working in Ann Arbor. So I guess the next step we're thinking is, you know, can we put this in a polished up form on a website, maybe have a form. People want to kind of like say, hey, I'm a co-op that is interested, or a person who's interested, or give feedback. And then just, you know, potentially people are just going to run with it and make little modifications like we heard yesterday. You know, Light Farm might start doing a piece of this. So that's kind of some of the flow. Lots of little ideas inside of an idea. That's that's the brainstorm. So Greg, I don't know if do you have another piece, or do we want to ask for questions? Muted.
This is just like trying to conceptualize what we're talking about, you know, having like active functional groups inside of a cooperative and just asking the questions like, how does that work? Like, how does a person enter? How does a group enter? How does something form? What are the expectations? You know, what do you give? What do you get? What do you have to agree to? Like all that kind of stuff. So it's just another way to represent it in a more sort of like organizational way. So yeah, again, a lot of work.
Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being a witness to the work of the group, but would love to invite the mentors to give some feedback.
Hi, I don't know if is it just me and Anna today. I saw anyway. I just in case this is the last time like I get to talk to all of you, I just want to say that I feel like you're all my new best friends. Like this has been so fun. And I really enjoyed it. And I like really feel like I mean I wasn't even in all the sessions, but I just really feel like I know all these really cool new people. So thanks for that. And Jeff, you tell a good story. You're a good storyteller. So
Thank you.
I loved it. One of the questions I meant to ask yesterday, and I forgot, is because wondering if this could be open to couples and families. And the reason I asked that is because this year we've been getting a lot of, on our WOOF program, we've been getting couples and like a mom and a daughter, a dad and a son, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to put that out there because it could be really a cool, option. And then another thing that's just been coming to mind that I feel like it would be great if we could figure out a way to put this front and center is the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because terms like cooperatives and communities, sometimes those have the connotation of everybody being the same, like we're all a certain kind of person. So I'm not sure how to do that, but I think that, as going forward and getting more into the operating agreements and things like that, can hear the lawyer speaking, right? That it just, I want to make sure that every kind of person, any kind of person from anywhere, age, whatever, can be accepted in this community, and it's not meant to be exclusive. So I don't know how to really say that any other way, but that's that.
Well, Leslie, I'm totally on board with being best friends. I feel like we're in the same flow.
And can you see my house here that it's not finished? So can you see the insulation up there? Okay, so I need someone to come and help me do some eco building. So keep me in mind for this co-op.
So
I've been living here for 30 years, by the way, and it's still not finished.
All right, well, maybe it's a sign. Here we go.
Yeah.
So on the family side, absolutely. We were talking a bit about this before. I at this other place that I work, that I am drawing some of these ideas of pair programming from, they had this workplace value of when you had a new baby, you bring that baby in, and it was part of the excitement of the workplace, or you have your dog can come in. And I could see, I always thought, we could extend that further. I always wanted to have a job where it was safe and exciting for, my kid in the future to come and kind of see what their parents are doing, to kind of like experience that place. It should, obviously, hopefully I'm not working in a toxic environment or with people that are, anti-community. And so I would hope that we'd have these different co-ops, and that would be part of the value. I mean, if you could do a straw bale house build, and you have some kids kind of be playing in the mud, doing some little, a dog house right out of straw bale next to the other people working, I think that would be wonderful. And couples
like it is on a farm, most family farms are that way. You just need a really creative human resources person to help you set that up, because a typical human resources person is going to say, no children at work, got to keep that out of there. So, and it's doable. And all of this is so outside the box that we just need to make sure we're talking to the right people going forward to make it work for real. I love it.
Yeah, and again, that could be some of the synergy. If you've got some people who are saying like, hey, I'm really interested in education right now. Maybe they're kind of, interconnected with these other co-ops, kind of helping, the kids be engaged. And then as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion, that also came up. I think that's something that this other company kind of struggled with, because they kind of were just like, yeah, we're just not seeing anybody show up for our coding company who's diverse, and if they did, we'd be open to them. And I was just like, that's not enough. We need to be going outside of our bubble, making a big effort to connect to other communities and say, hey, what problems are you struggling with? That you would like some support. How can we listen and follow in this case and build that relationship, and then eventually build a pipeline where we're going to the, kind of all going to the same place of being able to work in nature, or work, build our own houses, own our own host, places, or have high paying jobs and skills. So definitely, I think that the HR department should always be reflecting, hey, are we in a bubble right now? Like, are we getting complacent? How do we make new bridges? I love that. So how do we do that? Let's talk more. That's definitely a value for me.
What the heck is that?
Those are your emojis. Sorry about that. Anna, you wanted to say something, I think.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out the emojis. So I was I'll just follow Leslie, and I was like, oh man, I signed up to do this hackathon thing. I don't know. I'm super skeptical about ag tech and organic. I don't need another GMO seed solution. And it's been really inspiring and gives me a lot of hope for the world, just listening to all of you. And I guess I would say on this particular project, just a couple thoughts. I think what you're trying to do is create a whole new economy. Like, we're not going to work on this transactional situation like we have in the past, right? It's more about relationship based. And so there's some really awesome resources out there around shared service co-ops, the whole cooperative movement. I don't know how much you've looked into the actual legal structures, but there's actually legal entity structuring around this that would allow you to help do that. And then Doug, my partner and husband's at the Moses conference this week, which is in Madison, Wisconsin. It's the largest organic farming conference. Anyway, he just was texting me like, oh, I just watched this keynote by this woman on solidarity economy, and I'm super inspired to be more radical. So I
Tell them to come.
The more that we can put more examples like that out there, and then maybe a more pragmatic thing is I would suggest maybe looking not so much as like, here's your farmers and here's your coders, because the statistic as I know it, and I'm one of these statistics, is that 89.6% of farms have someone working an off-farm job. So if that's the case, what are those people doing? Right? Like, I'm the director of data governance for the Forest Service's Northern region. I did that after a 30-year public service career, and I'm so close to retirement, I don't want to let that go. But there are some amazing people that I know are trying to farm and holding an off-farm job. And if there was a way to find the nexus of those two things, gosh, that could be so amazing. Like, I think it's ridiculous that we all have to work other jobs to have health insurance, right? Like, shouldn't that be something we all have? So anyway, nice concept. I love it. And let me know what else I can do to help. So thanks for inviting me into the inner circle, guys.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Thanks for making the inner circle bigger. I have a question for you, actually, on that point. Do you think most people start farms because they want to start a business, or because they want to engage in the agricultural process?
Great question, Greg. I think it's more about the agricultural process. I think most people who have no flipping clue how hard it is.
Right.
Like, oh, it's beautiful to grow carrots outside of Bozeman, right? It's a lot freaking harder to take on $1 million debt and start a dryland farm in the middle of nowhere, right? And hats off to the many, many people I know who are friends who are doing vegetable production. My sister's one of them. But it is so much hard work, and you wake up after 10 years with kids and hurt body and like, what did I do, right? Like, so I think we've got to think about, well, what Doug and I say, and I don't say this in very many places, but how do we professionalize the role of being a farmer? Like, we really should have our best and our brightest going into it. And there's no kind of certification process for that. And I'm an engineer by training, and I had to get a 4-year degree and take a test and take another test and get certified before I could actually design things that might fall down and kill people. And we don't ask for any of that for the people that are taking care of our land or stewarding our food production. So,
Well, also we don't. Go ahead.
No, it's just a little provocative, off the cuff for me. Go ahead.
Wait, let me ask this question: why, when you graduate with a degree in engineering, a very tiny percentage of those people have to go start a business in order to engage in what they enjoy doing? But in farming, 90% of them have to, right? So like, it's just an odd industry in that you can't just engage in agriculture. You have to also do the full suite of starting a business all the way to managing it and all the other things. And agriculture is just this little piece in the middle of it, which is crazy. So
yeah.
that's, just to pitch this idea further is like, if we can create spaces in which you can engage in that piece that you want to engage in an effective way, a trained, effective, intelligent. I'm not just talking like random people show up to pick berries on a Saturday. I'm talking about like trained and effective people. That seems like it could be a win.
I think that's a beautiful vision, because one of the things Doug and I are trying to do is, how do you bring new people into agriculture, right? And it used to be that our model was you grow up on a farm, you take over a farm, right? Well, if we want to have vast acres under a different production system, we have to have more people come into it. In Montana alone, there's 18 million acres of cropland, and less than 1% of that certified organic. On our farm, pretty much our entire staff has come from elsewhere. Our foreman grew up in Buffalo, New York, and didn't grow up on a farm and has come to love it. Like, so what is that career path and entryway into agriculture where you don't have to totally go it alone? You don't have to carry all the risk yourself. You don't have to take on a huge debt load to start it up. We have to find fundamentally different opportunities. So yeah, really, really great questions. And no easy solutions, but I'm glad you guys are working on them, and I'd be happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you. Amber, did you have your hand raised, or is it?
I did, thank you. So my question to you all is, where do you see logistically the next steps for this project? Like, it's clear this is a very complex concept that I think has really been worked through in the last few days. And I'm just trying to get a sense, like, how do we connect this into that like technology side of things? Like, how do you move this from this concept on paper into something that actually facilitates all these things that you'd like for it to do?
Yeah, so I think there's two pieces for me, and that is one, to kind of, polish up this concept with some stuff, open to interpretation, and can we create some kind of a video or, a little TikTok meme or just a website with a diagram, like a little comic book or something, and then, let people spread that and come up with what they want to do with it, and see what happens. The other thing is, Greg and I are in Ann Arbor. I already know there's a couple different little co-ops. We could potentially be trying to do an instance of this, which isn't going to necessarily work for other places. But we do have certain resources here. We do have a bunch of universities and research money. We got, the tech scene. We've got lots of organic CSAs going on, and now some straw bale house models. So I'm, as this pandemic wanes and we can start to kind of get together again, or try and do this remotely, I think that, we've made some friends here. We can start taking steps to kind of like learn those legalities. And yeah, basically, eventually we could have a group of people who are working on some app, bringing in money. And then that group of people's like, hey, if one of us wants to go work on a farm, you're still part of this organization. You still get the healthcare, start building it out, baby steps like that.
Cool, that's super helpful for me, especially for my reporting for the grant. So thank you.
Jamie.
I feel bad. I wanted to do more to help out with this. I had thrown out the idea of like just throwing up like a quick landing page, which I tried to do this morning and then got nerd sniped working with some fancy new framework to do it. But we could do it, and I'm happy to. I think I threw out the idea of like we just we don't even like try to buy a domain. Although I did look up, and the domain umbrella.coop is available. Just maybe omit that from the recording so nobody snatches it up. But but then we could just see who's interested and see who else we could bring to the table and see if we want to meet some later date and talk about more specifics. Because there's a lot of folks I know on social.coop, the Mastodon server, and a group that Chris Newman put together that has a separate Discord server where people are talking about this like shared services co-ops. And I think bridging some of those communities is a great way to start.
Awesome. Yeah, let's definitely talk more.
And maybe I'll add my offer of help as well. I think in our discussion, I'd mentioned there would be 3 apprenticeships models that I thought that I might be down to support, whether it was an education apprenticeship, if somebody wanted to come out and learn how to design courses for topics they were interested in, design mentors, design apprenticeships, if people wanted to come out and just do short design stints to go from concept to something that they can then build out, or research apprenticeships, if somebody wanted to come and sort of go through the research process and figure out how to go again from idea to project to something that they could take on. I'd be down to at least join that education side of things in the co-op. So down to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Kita.
Yeah, on my end, I'm really mostly I've already been like looking at housing and lowering the cost of housing and alternative building and living generally. So that's the area. I think the place-based instance of this is most of interest to me. I think it could be done in a totally remote way. I think especially the sort of very straightforward like ag plus developer mix, but I'm most compelled by the place-based version of this.
Okay, so if there's no other thoughts or comments, we have been rapping for over an hour now. So I figured I would maybe try to see if we could come to a close. I'll do last open call for comments or thoughts. Otherwise, I have a couple of closing remarks that I'd like to share, and then I'll hand back over to Jessica and Amber. But yeah, last call.
I just want to say thanks again, and it's possible that we just planted the seed to change the world. So I'm very excited. Go us.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. I really enjoyed this, Amber and Jessica. It does feel like it was a million years ago when we first started talking about it, but virtual hackathons, kind of sort of possible. I think I would do this again. Very grateful for your participation and enthusiasm and complete patience with some of the technology hiccups earlier. We barreled through, and as always, I am thankful for you making the place and space and time and heart for all of the work that we always do together. So I'm excited to see you at the next Organic Goat Hackathon in the future. Cool. Jessica and Amber. back to you
Yeah,
again.
throughout this process, I have been getting emails from people being like, this is cool. Even the people who experienced all of the crazy tech stuff going on at the first day, I was like, this is kind of what the hackathon is. Like, we experience these tech problems, and we figure out ways to overcome them. And I think even just being a part of that made people think about things differently. And and I've also gotten a lot of emails that were like, I couldn't make this one, but I'm so excited about this idea. When is the next one? So there's energy, there's excitement. And as you have heard from the farmers in this group, this really makes an impact on people's experience and perception of tech and the future of organic and tech. And hopefully it's having that same impact vice versa. So the cross pollination of what's going on is so important. So thank you. I feel like this was a huge success. Amber, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. I wanted to actually just sort of remind us of the context of this hackathon and how it was actually partnered with our other conference on, improving equity and access for organic farmers and ag tech. And I think this has been a really beautiful marriage between that conference and what, the products that came from this, sort of to echo Anna's, what's the word I'm thinking of? Anyways, there was concern that, what ag tech and organic could mean, where we could all land. And this was such an organic process. And we came up with these really cool, very different ideas than I think what people would consider as ag tech. So yeah, the process has been pretty amazing. And I also wanted to remind us that, the conferences that we hold, our organic confluences, intentionally try to bring together lots of different stakeholders. And that's because we want to, get all these different perspectives to create better discussions, more inclusive discussions, and have more inclusive and creative outcomes. And so, yeah, this was, again, a really great example of that happening here today. So thanks for everybody who participated, and farmers who joined and, hung in with us for the technology. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was that I feel really hopeful that this will continue. So like I said, these feel like very solid concepts, and I really hope that people, continue here on this call, continue to dig in and bring in more people to really help these concepts come into fruition and bring some real life to them. So yeah, thanks so much for all your hard work. We really appreciate it.